We're all here on some level because of money. That's one of the other things. We're here because of our good heart, and we're here because of money. And I want to see how we can bring those two things together more consciously. And one of the things about money, it's one of the most powerful forces in our world, and yet we have so many unconscious beliefs about it. There's so many things running around in our heads that we don't really realize are actually moving and motivating our behavior around money. If I hold up a $100 bill in front of you, you have a relationship to this. It's not just a piece of paper. We've put so much meaning into it. Layers and layers of meaning. And it's cultural, it's personal, it's ancestral. We borrow our parents' beliefs on it.
All right, so just as a quick introduction, my name is Gudmundson. I am the co-founder and CEO of Sensate. And I've really spent my entire career in exponential technology fields. So what that means, it's these technologies that have grown very, very fast and really transformed our lives and societies, and also had a huge impact on our economies. So, for example, I worked on robotics in 2001 too. That hasn't really transformed our lives yet, but will. I worked on mobile technology in 2004, 5, 6, 7, when people still didn't think that mobile was going to be a big thing. No one was going to want to do anything on mobile phones. And I also worked in big data that turned into machine learning and AI, and also social media technology. And I've left many of those industries. For example, I left social media technology industry in 2011. And that was really because it was no longer aligning with my values. And so I could see that this, which was this beautiful innovation to connect people across the globe, really turned into something that was more used for manipulation. So that really kind of comes to the core of my passion in my career, which is that technology is just an amplifier and an accelerator. And we can accelerate good in society, or we can accelerate bad. And the reason that we're seeing a lot of negative impacts of technology in society is really the lack of consciousness. So that then leads me to how I got to do what I do today. I'm not going to say too much about the product. It's where the little tablet is. You can check it out yourselves. But what it does is ultimately help a lot of people across the globe get out of states of stress and anxiety. And given that stressed states, apart from cutting off our immune system and lots of other important functions, actually disconnects our prefrontal cortex, which is our conscious mind. Having a stressed population actually means that it's very difficult to increase consciousness. And as an entrepreneur, it's very exciting to know that our users in about 50 countries, every time we help them out of a state of stress and anxiety, we're actually reconnecting prefrontal cortices, which means increasing consciousness on some level. But then why I'm here is really because that is like the purpose aspect of conscious entrepreneurship, but really want to run the business, and I think that's a passion we share, and take that well beyond just the purpose of the company, but really how we make the workplace a space to grow both professionally and personally, which is a huge passion of mine. I find that entrepreneurship in general is an incredible journey of personal development, and I'm sure that's also something that we share. So really just the topic of money, which is blood in the company. It's the bloodstream. The company can't function without money. It doesn't matter if it's an NGO or whatever it is. It's really an absolute fundamental force in our companies and in order to grow. And at an early stage, we're both at a kind of early stage with our current companies, it is also cash is the number one thing. It is life or death. So with all our values and all our priorities, really having money in the bank and our ability to keep going so that we can do whatever it is we want to do is the number one thing. And it's also when money is a lot on your mind and can cause a lot of friction and sensitivity. So yeah, back to the ability to have a really raw and honest conversation right now. As Lopa said, we don't actually know each other very well. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So yeah, introduce yourself as well.
I'm Lopa van der Mersch. I am the founder and co-CEO of Rasa. My co-CEO is right there, Lenny raising his hand. And so we have the herbal coffee alternatives over here. And I've been very interested in my whole career about business for benefit. Like, how do we actually make business something that makes the world better, where we're not compromising our values all along the way? And one of the things that I've just really reflected on over the course of, I had a career in climate change before this, and then did kind of a lot of spiritual seeking, which I've done for a lot of my life. And then got to this place where I needed energy and needed something that would sustain me that wasn't coffee, because I was very fried and stressed out, and so I started Rasa. And one of the things that I've noticed over the course of these different businesses and things that I've been engaged with is how often that the ways that I treat my friends and the ways that I would treat somebody that I'm transacting with on an individual basis versus what happens in the context of business, there's a different set of rules. Like, there are ways in which it is just sort of established and accepted that, yeah, we just do things a little bit differently in business than I would with a very close friend. And I think that is fucked up. Why do we accept that? Why is that just the way it is? And one of the things that I really appreciate about my co-CEO, one of the things that he asked in our interview process when we were hiring him for head of marketing is he asked, what is your take on manipulation in marketing? How there's a spectrum of manipulation that is generally accepted, that we are sort of taking advantage of the weaknesses of the human mind by trying to sell them something. And like, where are you guys on that spectrum? And I was like, all the way on the end of no. And thank you for asking that question. So, I've been really engaged in this question over the course of my career about how do we actually bring our values and our good heart into business? How do we bring the full force of our awareness into business and not cut corners? And the reality is that sometimes you have to make fucking hard choices. And sometimes there are where you're like, I have to compromise my values a little bit because otherwise we're out of business. You were talking about cash is king. Like, so I'm curious if anything comes to mind for you in terms of like, when was a moment when you were like, wow, I just had to cross my values for something that was mission critical. It was a survival question.
Yeah, I think, you talk about also like I'll say conscious business growth or smart, like the marketing side of things. And this is very interesting for me right now because we're really working with, going back to Kyla was talking yesterday about Maslow's hierarchy. And we're working on helping people quite low in that hierarchy. And I think people in this room are maybe helping people at the top of ascension, but really what I'm passionate about is this mass impact on people, that just helping them take the very first step. People are nowhere near meditation, would never ever touch something like Conscious Entrepreneurship Summit or anything like that. And so I'm really passionate to reach those people. And then yes, of course, I need to meet them where they are. And they are on platforms that I may not love. And they also click on things, and that's like constantly like, okay, well, this is still true, this is still who we are, but just constantly kind of negotiating that because perfection is not congruent with mass market. It's just where we are today. And then just falling in love with where humanity is today and where we can have impact there, and sort of moving away from my own judgment around, Facebook as a platform or things like that, because guess what? We have to start somewhere. When it comes to just investment, I think I've turned down money where I felt that the values of the investors were not aligned. And that is actually also like one of the reasons I'm here, is to shift to even more conscious investment. I come from a tech and VC sort of world, and I've raised from really amazing VCs. And by the way, I got two of my investors sitting on the board, and we start, and they are like California VC investors, and we start all our board meetings with a few minutes of meditation or breath work. And so if they're going to sit on the board of our company, they better also align with our values. So no compromises there. So I think there are a lot of different areas, but certainly there is a constant negotiation on the growth side, because if we want to have massive impact in the world and really reach people who really do not have values I align with, then we're gonna have to meet them also where they are with messaging that aligns.
Yeah, I relate to that. I mean, we've gotten people. Maybe I'll start with more broadly. Sometimes we have, as a business, been, I would say, overly purist. My co-CEO will probably laugh and is nodding, because we have, like very, very high values. And one of the things, I was talking to a mentor of mine who's a CEO of a pretty big company, and we have classically really over-delivered for our own product in terms of functionality, because we're like, why wouldn't we make the best possible product that we possibly could and charge the minimum amount that we could and be sustainable as a business? And what we found over time was that we're way over delivering compared to our competitors, and nobody knows that. Like, nobody gets that. The market isn't educated enough to value that as much. And my mentor, who had similar issues in her own business, was like, yeah, you just need to be a little bit better than your competitors. And you can, and your competitors are actually making a lot more money because they're delivering less for more margin generally. And so that's one of the things that we've had to wrestle with as a business, is in terms of like, okay, how do we meet the market where it's at, and deliver a product that we feel is the best it possibly can be, and still be sustainable as a business, and not just do the like, well, we're just going to be a little bit better than our competitor. Like that also sucks. And like that's market dynamics, and that's of course we're still trying to educate our consumers and everything, but that takes time and money that we don't necessarily have the luxury of.
So I wanted to just reflect a little bit on just how we got into the situation that we have mindsets around money and things like that. Because really, it started out in a very natural way. Like, money and economy is human nature. And as an individual, we have a gift. And maybe that would have been making a beautiful clay pot, or training horses, or whatever it was. And then I'll train your horse and you give me your pot, and that's an economy, right? And then we started to move to silver coins and bills and whatnot. So it's very natural to be rewarded for our gifts. And there is nothing shameful about that. So sometimes it's almost like economy and money is somehow unnatural, but it's just rewarding value to each other. But it doesn't necessarily look that way, because then right now we would have an economy where people who add the most value to society are the wealthiest, and clearly we can see that's not the case. A lot of people that are adding enormous value to society, like teachers or nurses or whatnot, are not Parents. Rewarded for their value. And so what's interesting is the transition, for example, with the Industrial Revolution, where we moved from trading value of our gifts to trading time for money. And that's kind of where we start to disconnect who we are as souls, and what a lot of us are on our journey to realign kind of shifts. And then I want to tie this back to the fact that we have accelerators of a system, like the economy is a system, and then we add taxes and all those things. It's really just coming together, say, I can't build a road on my own, so let's all put a little money in and we can build a road together. That's the origin of taxes, right? So taxes are also not originating in something evil, it's collaboration between humans. But technology has had an important impact really on our economy in terms of acceleration. So we look at the storytelling, and I think this is a very important point. When we started talking about the internet, it was all about how this is going to serve the individual little entrepreneur. Everyone can, get a global market. And looking back, what we've ended up with is international monopolies instead of national monopolies. Mm-hmm. So an acceleration of our existing value system. And I hear a lot of the same now that we're talking about blockchain, and there's a lot of kind of value ideas around it, but it is all the same. Like technology has an impact of acceleration, but if we don't change the value system of our economy, then it's just going to be the same people that end up having more money every recession. So we have now a system that is accumulating this money power source into fewer and fewer hands at an accelerated rate without the same flow or redistribution. And it's really important for us to understand this because it's the system that we live in. And technology has a huge impact. If you look at individuals like Jeff Bezos that own more money than countries, I think he's worthy to be a billionaire. He's a fantastic businessman. But in terms of that level of money, you can't really create that much value in one lifetime, right? And it's not like really redistributing. And then, we talk about conscious entrepreneurship, which really could transform this economy. And that also then comes into how we spend our money, conscious decisions about investment and things like that. And I don't think that you know that I'm a community round investor in Rasa.
I did not know.
So that's small investments, but really
that's awesome.
But really to start be very conscious. And one thing that I say always is like how if we tell everyone to say, I love you and I want you to thrive. When we invest, when we buy something, that changes everything. Because if you buy from a company and you go, I'm not sure I love you and I want you to thrive. Investing in Rasa is like, oh yeah, I love you and I want you to thrive. So that's where really we start looking at the flow of money into hands that where we want it to be, because it is power. And yes, Lopa, I really want you to have a lot of money because I know that you will make conscious investments and make choices to buy early products that may not yet be at a point where they can have the lowest prices because you have a lot of money and you will make those choices. Then they get more market and then they can thrive. So I think it's extremely important for this community not to shy away from money, but really to welcome it in as a force for good. I have a question for you, but I see we have a question here.
So I was hoping you maybe will go a little bit more into your personal beliefs about money and how that has influenced your decision making as business owners. Maybe how has that helped or maybe hindered your business and your journeys as entrepreneurs? Maybe more towards your early times as entrepreneurs. But it's something that is really in my head, And I have, and maybe just to give you a little bit of context, I have, one of my challenges is I have very different beliefs about money than the rest of the people around me. I grew up in a relatively privileged environment, and a lot of the people around me didn't. And so that relationship, that struggle about money, like that differential, makes it very makes it difficult to make decisions about money. And so I just, if you have thoughts about that, that'll be amazing.
Excellent question. And I just want to commend your awareness around that differential and just your desire to balance that in your own way. And so again, come back to the good heart that's there. If you come from that and continue to come from that and bring more and more awareness, that is going to ripple it out, and that is going to make change in how you are able to make decisions there. And I love that you asked about towards the beginning of my business relationship versus now, because it was quite a freaking journey. Because I started out with just a tremendous amount of scarcity around money. I didn't want to take investment because in one of my prior businesses, I had seen just how much that meant compromising values. That as soon as you had investors, there were suddenly all these other voices in the game, and then we were making decisions as a business. I wasn't the lead of the business at that time, but I was one of the co-founders. And I really was personally pained by this compromising of values that happened through investment. So in the beginning of Rasa, I was like, yep, we're gonna just do everything as cheap as we can. And that sometimes meant hiring people that were not capable of doing the job that we were asking them to do, and then thinking that I, as somebody who was not experienced in that particular domain, was going to somehow train them. Like, that was, and then that created so many dynamics in the course of the business, where it was just like I was holding all of these different factors and, you know, way over executing myself as the founder and CEO at the time, on all of these different things, because I wasn't actually just getting the support that I needed. I wasn't just acknowledging just how much fucking work this is and thinking that I could just take it all on myself and kind of manage the team. It was horrible. I don't recommend it. So at some point, I started to get into more of the question of value and benefit and being like, wait a second, this is a really good idea. I believe in it. I believe in myself, and it is worth extending a little bit more to get the people who can make it happen. And just start to think a little bit more about, like, okay, if I hire 3 people who don't really know what they're doing versus 1 person who does, that's a much, you know, bigger, that can be far more impactful to the business. So over time, there was definitely a big personal facing myself process, and really looking at, like, why am I in this absolute mess and completely white knuckling my first couple of years of entrepreneurship, which I think is normal anyway. So, you know, it's just a different form of, you get so many different types of white knuckling you can do. But, you know, why is this so hard? And really being like, oh, I'm not actually valuing myself, my time, what I, as the founder, can contribute that's unique compared to what somebody else can do in the business, and not valuing the idea enough. And then I started to hire better quality people. And then we got to the place where we decided to take outside investment. And that was a big question too, about, like, okay, so I didn't like what happened when we took in certain types of outside investment in my prior business, but what about different forms of capital? And so we went for a community fundraising round and had an unbelievably successful thing. And I think that's an unbelievably successful round. And I think that's in part because people felt the values of the business and they felt the good heart. And they were like, yeah, I want you to succeed.
Do you think that the aspect of saving a lot of money or doing things, where did that come from? Was it scarcity thinking, worthiness, must work hard, be a good girl? Like, what was the underlying value, and what did you have to do to kind of overcome that?
I definitely, a big one for me personally was, if it doesn't hurt, it's not working. And I think that there is, you know, there's a lot of kind of martyrdom when it comes to personal growth and personal development and that sort of thing. Like I had this kind of thing, like, if I'm not, like, bleeding with my guts on the floor, am I really growing? You know? And so there was this sense of, like, I have to work really hard and I have to prove to myself that, you know, I'll do any job in the business, that I'm, you know, right there with all the entire team. And there's value in the heart of that, but it's, again, anything is how we use it. And so I was also really hampering and hamstringing the business by not valuing my own time more.
Yeah. I think it's even more important for all of us that actually are running companies, and I've very much done the same. So for me, I think it was an underlying must work hard to be of value. There is a side of me which has a huge respect for using other people's money. Which we did. So I think, you know, that's another aspect of really honoring and valuing that someone else has saved up this money and invested in the business, and that we should all, as a culture, really honor our investors as well, because it's almost like a dirty word sometimes, and like they are actually contributing to all the great things that are happening in the business. And I've had a bit of a volatile financial history, so a bunch of self-judgment there. But I see we've got 2 more questions. I think we only have a few more minutes, yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mira. I think I'm probably one of the few out-of-towners here. I'm from San Francisco, and yeah, so it's good to be here. Hello.
I love the Bay.
Yeah, so thanks for this conversation. I think that it makes me think a lot about, like, what Lopa was talking about, and then initiated in the meditation, it really starts from the how we see ourselves, because the scarcity mindset that we all, not we all, but that most of us have about money, or that's in the system, it starts from the kind of feeling that everything is not enough. So it's a zero sum. Someone has more than I don't have that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think kind of fundamentally speaks to the I'm not enough. And it's coming from the kind of a long history of how this whole like human working system has been created. And since the Adam Smith, and if you look at the Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, basically his premise was humans are not willing to work if you leave them. They're lazy. So you have to give money to incentivize them to work.
Wow, that's a core belief right there for our entire culture.
Correct. So, but it's wrong. We all know it's wrong. And it could be different. And I think it's almost like changing that kind of and it's a 100-year-old belief system that's kind of a prevalent in our whole, everything, in capitalism and everything too. And it has some good parts too. I was so inspired by reading the book Power Law, because it does talk about how the Silicon Valley and entrepreneurship started, and the venture capital started too, with these 8 crazy scientists. And the writer actually interviewed the first VC, who was Arthur. His name was Arthur Rock, and he said that basically capital freed the ideas by supporting these 8 scientists who were trapped in the system, and they had great ideas, and by investing in them, they got to actually expand their ideas and then really run free. Mm-hmm. So I think what he was thinking was, if you look at the origin of VC and then entrepreneurship, is believing in the human goodness. Mm-hmm. And but then I think now what we see is that people forget about that, right? We don't remember it. So I feel like this kind of events, community building, is so critical, so that we can connect with that and then start finding the investors who are value aligned, like you're talking about. Because we also know, I worked at Silicon Valley for 19 years, so I know how rare it is to find investors who are really having the mindset like you're talking about. Yeah. So we can find more investors like that and then connect with each other and then expand the community larger and larger. So yes, I wanted to just share that idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And just a quick comment on that too, and to tie in something that Anna was saying earlier, like part of what happened from Adam Smith to now is layers upon layers upon layers of abstraction. Money has become more and more and more symbolic. And what I encourage everybody to think of is like, actually use money as an awareness practice to connect to the interconnectivity. Like when I think about a bag of Rasa, like that is not just dollars to me. Like it's people who grew the herbs. It's the earth that sustained those herbs. It's the people who transported they say it makes 14,000 people to create just a pencil. Like that's the level of interconnectivity. So try and take money out of abstraction a bit more and use that as a practice.
Somebody who came from the coffee industry for 20 years, I really appreciate that. But I've been taking a deep dive on my personal values while logistically just stripping away the social norms of them as well. And it's really conflicted me. But ultimately, how are you incorporating like your social values without kind of like moving down that avenue of something that is not truly aligning or is just kind of the social norm?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I started more the kind of absolutist, and it's very easy to be angry with the state of the world. And so for a lot of just learning to accept all aspects of myself is also learning to accept where the world and this wonderful, cute humanity is at right now. We're quite early in a consciousness journey. And so just kind of accepting where we're at and having constantly that dialogue and those values present in the room. And that's why conscious entrepreneurship is so important, because it isn't just the decision about the product. It is who do we work with for marketing, packaging, every contractor, every partner we work with are kind of drawn into the conversation of these values. And then there is compromising. So I think what is important to me is that growing awareness, is the growing consciousness, and we're early stage, right? So it means that, for example, it's an electronics, we have electronics, and it's not possible to make that without some Chinese manufactured components, but it's helping increase consciousness on the planet, and we're constantly working on where is that. And once we grow enormously big, we, like Apple, will be able to have an impact on the technology industry and the manufacturing and component industry. We can make choices to sponsor a company that is now manufacturing in a sustainable way, etc. So it is just kind of constantly knowing where we're going, and that perfection is not possible as step one. Yeah.
I could do the entire talk just about that.
We're out of time.
So I think maybe one just quick thing to sum it up. We're a public benefit corporation. And so that means that legally, which is different than a B Corp, which B Corp is also wonderful, and we may pursue that at some point. But public benefit corporation means that we are legally structured so that we are allowed to benefit the public and have that be a primary value. For a corporation, legally, structurally, the primary value that you are legally obligated to provide is profit to shareholders. We are allowed to hold a public benefit. We are mandated to hold a public benefit as co-equal to profit to shareholders. And I think that that's actually a really remarkable structure when you get into the legality of how businesses work.
I definitely want to hear more about that, but I know your talk is ending. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think are we out of time?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, great.
thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you all.